The banging on my front door started at exactly 3:17 a.m. I know because I'd been staring at my phone for hours, watching Andre's on my way message collect dust since 8 p.m. 3 loud knocks, a pause, then 2 more. My heart jumped into my throat. I'm Yolanda, and until that moment, I thought I knew what my life was. Financial analyst, loving wife, daughter of the greatest poker player I'd ever known. Funny how quickly labels can peel away. Mrs. Burton, a gravelly voice carried through the door. We know you're home. Cars in the driveway. I crept to the peephole, my bare feet silent against the hardwood. 2 men stood outside, one tall and lean with silver-streaked hair, the other built like a linebacker. Both wore expensive suits that didn't quite hide their rough edges. Andre's not here, I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The silver-haired man, Russell, I'd later learn, chuckled. Oh, we know that, sweetheart. But see, Andre owes us quite a bit of money, and since you're his wife. My fingers trembled as I opened Andre's text messages. 6 months of working late excuses, mysterious weekend business trips, all lies. I don't know anything about any money, I said, my mind racing to the joint account I'd checked just yesterday. The one that should have held our life savings, the one that now showed a balance of $1342. 300,000, the linebacker said, plus interest. The number hit me like a physical blow. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out. That's impossible. Your husband's quite the optimist, Russell said. Always thought the next bet would turn things around. Check your bedroom closet, Mrs. Burton. Behind the shoe rack, there's an envelope. I ran upstairs, my heart pounding. The envelope was there, tucked behind my winter boots. Inside, a single sheet of paper with Andre's messy scrawl. I had no choice. I'm sorry. Don't try to find me. Found it, didn't you? Russell called up. We'll be back tomorrow night. Same time. Have a plan for our money, or things get uncomfortable. Their footsteps retreated. I heard car doors slam, an engine start. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Lacey. You okay? Just saw a black SUV leave your driveway. I couldn't answer. Instead, I sat on my closet floor, surrounded by Andre's empty hangers, and remembered my father's voice from years ago. Baby girl, he'd said, shuffling his ever-present deck of cards. In poker and in life, there are 2 kinds of players, those who fold when they're dealt a bad hand, and those who learn to play it anyway. Dad had been the best poker player in 3 states. He'd taught me everything he knew before cancer took him last year. Andre had been at the funeral, holding my hand, promising to always be there. Another lie. My phone buzzed again. Lacey, I'm coming over. No, I texted back. I'm fine. Talk tomorrow. I wasn't fine. I was terrified, angry, and something else. Something that felt dangerously like my father's steel-eyed focus before a big game. I went to my office and booted up my laptop. First, I checked our other accounts, all drained. Credit cards, maxed out. Then I started searching for Andre's digital footprints, social media, email, phone records. He'd vanished like smoke. But he'd taught me one thing during our 5 years together. Everyone leaves traces. You just have to know where to look. The sun was rising when I found my first lead. A poker forum Andre had been active on. His username was subtle, but I recognized his writing style. He'd been in contact with someone called Sandstorm about underground games. I opened my bottom desk drawer and pulled out Dad's old deck of cards. The familiar feel of worn cardstock against my fingers brought back hours of lessons at our kitchen table. Every tell has a tell, Dad would say. Every player has a weakness. Your job is to find it before they find yours. I started shuffling, muscle memory taking over. My hands stopped shaking. $300,000. The bookies would be back in less than 24 hours. I had 2 options, fold or play. I thought of Andre's note. I had no choice. There's always a choice. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Someone who knew computers the way my father knew cards. Poppy. It's Yolanda. Remember how you always said you owed me one? I need your help. The cards whispered against each other as I shuffled, and for the first time since the knocking started, I smiled. Game on. Poppy hadn't changed much in 10 years. Same wild red hair, same mischievous glint in her eyes, same tendency to type faster than she talked. She sat cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by laptops and energy drink cans, while I paced. "You really married a moron," she said, fingers flying across keyboards. "He used the same password for everything. Everything. Can you find him?" "Already did. Your boy's in Macau." She spun one laptop around. "Used his credit card at the airport 3 days ago. But that's not the interesting part." I stopped pacing. "What is?" "The interesting part is what I found in his email drafts. Come look at this." I knelt beside her, scanning the screen. Dozens of spreadsheets, each filled with names, dates, and numbers. My stomach turned when I recognized some of the names. Local business owners, a city council member, even a judge. "These are all people who owe them money?" I asked. "Better. These are people who've been paying them money. Look at the patterns." Poppy highlighted several rows. Monthly payments, always the same amount. "This isn't gambling debt, it's protection money." A sharp knock at the door made us both jump. I checked my phone. 3:17 a.m. again, right on schedule. "Hide," I whispered to Poppy. She grabbed her laptops and disappeared into the kitchen. I opened the door to find Russell and his linebacker friend. "Evening, Mrs. Burton. Ready to discuss payment options." "Come in." I stepped aside, my heart racing but my voice steady. "Would you like coffee?" Russell raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the invitation. "How hospitable." "Black, 2 sugars." I led them to the living room, where I'd set up my father's old poker table. 3 cups of coffee waited, steam rising in the dim light. "Interesting choice of furniture," Russell said, running his fingers along the felt. "It was my father's, Sylvester Gross. You might have heard of him." The linebacker's eyes widened slightly. Russell's smile tightened. "The Silver Fox? That was your father." "The very same." I sat down, gesturing for them to join me. "So about Andre's debt." 300,000, Russell said, "plus 20% interest. That's quite a sum." I took a sip of coffee. "Almost as impressive as your protection racket." Russell's hand froze halfway to his cup. "Excuse me?" I pulled out my phone and opened the files Poppy had sent me. "Would you like to see your spreadsheets? The ones detailing payments from Judge Matthews? Or maybe Councilman Peters?" "Where did you get those?" The linebacker started to stand, but Russell held up a hand. "Careful, Mrs. Burton. You're playing a dangerous game." "I'm my father's daughter. Games are what I do best." I met his gaze. "Here's my offer. You write off Andre's debt, and these files stay private." Russell laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Or I could have my friend here take your phone and break your fingers." "You could," I agreed. "But then the encrypted files, already sent to 3 different news outlets, would automatically decrypt at noon tomorrow. Plus, I imagine the FBI would be very interested in the offshore accounts I found." From the kitchen, I heard the faint sound of Poppy's typing. Right on cue, Russell's phone buzzed. He checked it, his face darkening. "Just sent you a sample," I said. "Consider it a preview." Russell stood slowly, straightening his jacket. "You have no idea what you're getting into." "Actually, I do. I'm getting into the same game you are, just playing it better." I stood as well. "You have until noon tomorrow to decide. After that, I start showing my cards." "This isn't over," Russell said, moving toward the door. The linebacker followed, cracking his knuckles meaningfully. "One more thing," I called after them. "Touch me or anyone I know, and everything releases immediately." I learned about dead man's switches from the best. The door slammed behind them, my legs turned to jelly, and I collapsed onto the couch. Poppy emerged from the kitchen, grinning. "That was badass. But you know they're not going to just give up, right?" "Of course not." I pulled out my father's cards and started shuffling. "That's why we're going to Plan B." "Which is?" I dealt 2 hands face down. We're going to find every game Andre played in, every player he lost to, every dealer who watched him lose. I flipped over my cards, pocket aces, and we're going to follow the money all the way to the top. Poppy picked up her cards and smiled. You know what? I think I missed you. Good, because I need your help with one more thing. I reached for my laptop. Tell me everything you know about underground poker apps. As Poppy launched into an explanation about encrypted messaging and digital currencies, I felt my father's presence in the room. Almost heard his voice. The best players don't just play the cards, baby girl. They play the people holding them. I was counting on it. The underground poker room smelled like expensive cigars and cheap desperation. I adjusted my wig, a sleek black bob that Poppy insisted made me look dangerous, and counted my chips. $20,000, borrowed from my sister Lacey, after I'd promised her it wasn't for anything illegal. Technically, I hadn't lied. Poker itself wasn't illegal. Everything else about this place was. Martini, miss? A young server appeared at my elbow. His name tag read Dean. Vodka tonic, I said, using the code phrase Poppy had discovered on the forums. With a twist of fate, Dean's eyes flickered with recognition. Right this way. He led me past the main gaming floor to a private room in the back. 5 players sat around a felt-topped table, with one empty seat waiting. Russell occupied the dealer's position, shuffling cards with practiced precision. Well, well, he said, looking up. What's your name, sweetheart? Diana, I replied, using the alias Poppy had created, complete with a digital background that would hold up to any quick searches. I heard this was where the real games happen. You heard right. Russell gestured to the empty chair. 10,000 minimum buy-in. I counted out my chips, feeling the weight of the hidden camera in my necklace. Poppy was watching everything from her van outside, recording every face, every transaction. The first few hands went exactly as planned. I played cautiously, lost small pots, won smaller ones, let them think I was just another rich thrill seeker out of her depth. Raise 20,000, said the man to my left. A sweaty developer I recognized from Andre's spreadsheets. I looked at my cards again, Queen and Jack of Hearts. The flop showed the 10 and King of Hearts, 1 card away from a royal flush. Call, I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. The turn card was the 9 of clubs. Useless. All in, the developer announced, pushing his chips forward. I touched my father's old ring, now serving as my good luck charm. He'd taught me this exact scenario. When someone bets big on a draw, he'd said, they're usually holding air and hoping you'll fold. Call, I said, pushing in my remaining chips. The river card came. Ace of Hearts. The developer's face fell as I revealed my royal flush. As I raked in the chips, I caught Russell studying me with newfound intensity. Impressive, he said. Your play style reminds me of someone. My father taught me, I replied truthfully. He was old school. Was. Cancer. Also true. The best lies, Dad always said. Stick close to the truth. 3 hours and several strategic wins later, my chip stack had tripled. I was about to call it a night when Dean appeared again. Phone call for you, Mr. Russell. Says it's urgent. Russell excused himself. Through my earpiece, I heard Poppy whisper, that's our distraction. Check his office now. I waited 2 hands, then stood. Powder room? Dean pointed me down a hallway. As soon as I was out of sight, I slipped into Russell's office. The door was locked, but Poppy had prepared me for that. 10 seconds with the electronic lock picker, and I was in. The office was minimal. Just a desk, computer, and filing cabinet. I plugged Poppy's USB drive into the computer, letting it do its work. 30 seconds to copy everything. Someone's coming. Poppy's voice crackled in my ear. I yanked out the drive and turned to leave, but the door was already opening. Dean stood there, eyes wide. You shouldn't be in here, he said, but made no move to raise an alarm. Neither should you, I replied, studying his face, young, nervous, with something like guilt in his eyes. I know who you are, he said quietly. You're Andre's wife. My blood froze. Are you going to tell Russell? Dean glanced over his shoulder, then stepped into the office, closing the door. No, but you need to be careful. Russell, he doesn't just break kneecaps anymore. Last guy who crossed him disappeared. Why are you telling me this? Because I've seen what they do to people. And because, he swallowed hard, Andre wasn't the only one they trapped. Some of us didn't have a choice. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Dean quickly opened the door. Bathroom's the next door over, ma'am, he said loudly. I slipped past him, heart pounding. When I returned to the table, Russell was back, watching me with those calculating eyes. Leaving so soon? He asked as I collected my chips. Quit while you're ahead, that's my motto. I smiled, all confidence on the outside, while my insides trembled. Smart girl, he said. We'll see you again soon, I hope. It wasn't a hope, it was a threat. As I left the club, Dean caught my eye one last time. His look was clear, be careful. I touched my father's ring again. Careful wasn't part of the plan anymore. You've lost your mind, Lacey said, pacing my kitchen. Completely lost it. First the money, now this? She waved the USB drive like it was radioactive. Do you know what Russell did to the Martinez family when they couldn't pay? I know exactly what he did, I replied, watching Poppy work her magic on my laptop. That's why we're doing this. We. Lacey threw up her hands. There shouldn't be a we. There shouldn't be anything except you calling the police. Got it, Poppy interrupted, spinning the laptop around. You're going to want to see this. The screen showed a series of emails between Russell and someone called Badge 647. My stomach dropped as I read through them. They've got a cop on payroll, Poppy explained, highlighting key passages. Detective Marcus Wright. He's been burying evidence, tipping them off about raids. Lacey stopped pacing. That's why nobody can touch them. It gets worse. Poppy continued typing. Look at these payment records. They're not just running poker games. They're laundering money through half the businesses in town. A knock at the door made us all freeze. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. Dean stood outside, looking nervous. What's he doing here? Lacey hissed. Only one way to find out. I opened the door, keeping the security chain on. Yes, Russell knows, Dean blurted out. Someone saw you with the USB drive. He's on his way, right now. I yanked him inside and locked the door. Poppy, pack up. Lacey, get your car ready. No time, Dean said. They're all ready. Headlights swept across the windows as 3 black SUVs pulled up outside. Back door, I ordered, grabbing my laptop and the USB drive. We rushed through the kitchen just as someone started pounding on the front door. Mrs. Burton, Russell's voice carried through the house. Let's have a chat about computer privacy. We slipped out the back just as the front door splintered open. Lacey's car was parked in the alley, thank God. We piled in, me in front, Poppy and Dean in back. Drive, I commanded. Lacey floored it. They're following, Poppy reported, looking back. 2 cars. Call Detective Santos, I told Lacey. The one from Dad's poker nights. Tell her everything. You know a clean cop? Dean asked, ducking as a car behind us accelerated. Dad always said, keep one ace up your sleeve. I gripped the dashboard as Lacey took a sharp turn. He played poker with her every Thursday for 15 years. The SUVs were gaining. One pulled alongside us, trying to force us toward the curb. Left, I shouted. Take the bridge. Lacey swerved onto the bridge approach. They're going to trap us. That's the plan. I pulled out my phone and opened the files Poppy had copied. Poppy now. She hit a button on her laptop. Suddenly, every digital billboard on the bridge lit up with Russell's spreadsheets, names, dates, amounts, including Detective Wright's payments. What did you do? Dean whispered. Created a spectacle. Poppy grinned. Those billboards are streaming live to every news station in the city. The SUVs behind us slowed. then stopped. Through the rear window, I saw Russell standing in the street, phone to his ear, watching his empire implode on screens 50 feet high. Police units are converging on the bridge, Lacey reported, still on the phone with Detective Santos. They want us to pull over at the north end. 5 minutes later, we sat in Detective Santos's office, watching the chaos unfold on TV. Russell and his men were in custody. Detective Wright was being led out of the precinct in handcuffs. The news was calling it the biggest corruption bust in city history. Your father would be proud, Detective Santos said, setting down 4 cups of coffee, and probably terrified. You took one hell of a risk. Speaking of risks, Dean spoke up. What about me? They'll know I helped. Witness protection, Detective Santos replied. If you're willing to testify, Dean nodded slowly. Yeah, I am. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. My heart stopped when I opened it. What is it? Lacey asked. Andre. I showed them the screen. He's in custody in Macau. They're extraditing him. Are you okay? Lacey put her arm around me. I thought about the last few weeks, the fear, the anger, the rush of outsmarting Russell at his own game. I thought about Andre's note. I had no choice. Yeah, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. I really am. So what now? Poppy asked. I pulled out my father's deck of cards and started shuffling. The familiar motion felt different now, less like comfort and more like victory. Now, I said, we make sure this never happens to anyone else. Detective Santos smiled. Deal me in. The holding cell smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Andre sat across from me, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame, looking smaller than I remembered. 3 weeks in a Macau detention center had hollowed his cheeks and darkened the circles under his eyes. You look different, he said, studying my face. The hair, a lot's different. I placed my father's deck of cards on the metal table between us. Start talking. Yolanda, not about us, about Russell's operation. Every game, every player, every corrupt cop you know about. I started dealing cards, the way Dad taught me to keep my hands steady during tough conversations. Detective Santos needs everything. Andre watched the cards fall. They'll kill me. They're going to prison. The question is how long you'll join them. I dealt the final card. Your choice. He picked up his cards, muscle memory from countless games at our kitchen table. I never meant for any of this to happen. The first time I lost big, Russell offered to let me deal for him instead of breaking my legs, said I could work off the debt. And it worked, at first. But then he started asking for more, said I had to bring in new players, wealthy ones. If they lost big, he'd force them to launder money through their businesses. Andre's hands shook. When I tried to quit, he threatened you. So you ran. I thought if I disappeared, they'd leave you alone. He looked up, eyes wet. How did you do it? Take them down? I gathered the cards back into the deck. I played the game better than they did. Your father would be... Don't. I cut him off. Don't talk about my father. A guard knocked on the window, signaling 5 minutes left. Detective Santos is offering you a deal, I said, standing. Full cooperation for a reduced sentence. Witness protection after. What about you? Andre asked. What happens to us? I touched my wedding ring. Still there, though I wasn't sure why. There is no us anymore. There's just what you owe. Not to me, to everyone Russell hurt because of people like you. I'll do it, he said quickly. I'll tell them everything. Good. I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. The money you lost, was it really 300,000? Andre's face fell. 450. Russell lied about the amount because he thought it would be easier to squeeze you for the smaller sum. I nodded, adding this to my mental ledger. Goodbye, Andre. Outside, Poppy waited in her van, surrounded by monitors. How'd it go? He'll talk. I slid into the passenger seat. What's happening at the club? Police are still cataloging evidence, but look what they found. She pulled up a video feed. On screen, officers were removing stacks of cash from behind a false wall. Over 2 million in cash. And that's just the beginning. My phone buzzed. A text from Dean. Meeting set for tonight. You sure about this? Are you? Poppy asked, reading over my shoulder. I thought about Andre's confession, about the real amount he'd lost, about all the other people Russell had trapped in his web. Russell's operation wasn't just about poker, I said. The games were just the hook. The real money was in forcing people to launder cash through their businesses, which means there are more clubs, more operations. Russell was middle management, at best. I texted Dean back, yes, I'm sure. Poppy started the van. Detective Santos won't like this. Detective Santos doesn't need to know. I pulled out my phone and opened the encrypted messaging app Dean had shown me. Besides, we're not doing anything illegal. Right, Poppy snorted. We're just infiltrating more underground poker clubs to find evidence of money laundering. Totally legal. The poker's legal. The evidence gathering is creative. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number with an address and a time. Below it, 3 words. Bring big money. You don't have to do this, Poppy said softly. Russell's done. Andre's cooperating. You won. I thought about the look in Andre's eyes when he confessed the real amount, about Dean's stories of other victims, about my father's voice in my head. The game's not over until you understand why you're playing. This was never about winning, I replied. It's about making sure nobody else loses everything to people like Russell. Okay. Poppy pulled up a satellite view of the address. But we do this smart. No risks, like last time. I touched my father's ring, feeling its familiar weight. No promises. The sun was setting as we drove across town, painting the sky the color of old playing cards. Somewhere out there, bigger players were running bigger games, ruining more lives. Time to ante up. The new club made Russell's look like a church bingo night. Located in the penthouse of an abandoned office building, it screamed old money and new crimes. Dean met me in the lobby, wearing a server's uniform that probably cost more than his monthly rent. They're all here, he whispered, leading me to the private elevator. Every major player in the region. Names? Better, I got photos. He slipped me a phone. Hidden camera in the service entrance. Poppy should be receiving them now. The elevator opened directly into what looked like a James Bond movie set. Crystal chandeliers, leather furniture, and at least 20 tables of high-stakes games in progress. My hidden camera necklace was already recording everything. Miss Diana, a smooth voice called out. We've been expecting you. The man approaching made Russell look like a small-time hustler, Thomas Price, according to Dean's intel. The real power behind the operation. Your reputation precedes you, he said, taking my hand. The woman who brought down Russell's operation, though I believe that's not your real name. My heart stopped, but my poker face held. I'm afraid you're mistaken. Am I? He smiled, all teeth and threat. Let's discuss it over a game. The high-stakes table just opened up. A trap, obviously, but one I had to walk into. Lead the way. The table's other players were exactly who we'd hoped to find. A corrupt judge, 2 city officials, and a real estate developer known for mysterious building fires. All part of the money laundering network we'd uncovered in Russell's files. 1 million minimum, Price announced, sitting down. Cash only. I opened my briefcase, filled with marked bills, courtesy of Detective Santos, though Price didn't need to know that. Deal me in. 3 hours later, my stack had doubled. I'd played cautiously, letting others take the big risks, while I gathered intel through seemingly casual conversation. The hidden microphone caught everything. Impressive discipline, Price commented during a break. You remind me of someone, a player from years ago. Sylvester, I believe. Common name, I replied, but my hand tightened on my cards. Indeed. Though his daughter might disagree. Before I could respond, Dean appeared at my shoulder. Sir, there's a situation in the kitchen. Excuse me, Price stood. Don't go anywhere, Diana. Or should I say, Yolanda. As soon as he left, Dean whispered, "You've got to get out. Now." They found the transmitter in my uniform. The evidence is already uploaded, Poppy confirmed, but they're calling in muscle. Lots of it. I looked at my chips. Nearly 2 million in winnings. No time to cash out. Create a distraction, I told Dean. Something big. He nodded and disappeared. 30 seconds later, the fire alarm blared. Sprinklers activated, sending the well-dressed crowd into chaos. I slipped away from the table, heading for the service elevator. A hand grabbed my arm. "Leaving so soon?" Price's voice was ice cold. "We haven't finished our game." "Actually, we have." I nodded toward the windows, where police lights were already flashing. "Check your phone." He pulled it out, face darkening as he read. Every major news outlet was running the story. Live footage from my necklace camera, financial records, everything. "You've made a serious mistake," he growled, grip tightening. "The mistake was threatening my father years ago," I replied. "Yeah, I know about that too. Found his old journals. You tried to force him into your operation. He refused. And died a nobody. He died clean, which is more than you'll be able to say." The elevator dinged. Armed officers poured out, led by Detective Santos. "Thomas Price," she announced. "You're under arrest." Price shoved me hard, making a break for the fire escape. He might have made it if Dean hadn't chosen that moment to emerge from the kitchen, armed with a serving tray. One well-timed swing, and Price went down hard. "Nice hit," I said, helping Dean up. "Baseball scholarship," he grinned. "Finally came in handy." Outside, Poppy was waiting in her van, surrounded by news vans and police cars. "Got everything," she confirmed, "including Price's confession about your dad." I watched as Price was led out in handcuffs, followed by the judge and city officials. The real estate developer had apparently tried to escape through the kitchen and ended up face first in a pot of soup. "You okay?" Detective Santos asked, joining us. I touched my father's ring, thinking about his journals, about the pressure Price had put on him, about the integrity that had probably cost him his life. "Yeah," I said, "but it's not over. There are always more games," she agreed. "No," I pulled out my father's deck. "There are always more players who need to be stopped." The cards felt warm in my hands, like they were ready for whatever came next. So was I. The courthouse buzzed with tension. I sat in the front row, watching Price and Russell share the defense table, while Andre testified against them. My soon-to-be ex-husband looked small in his orange jumpsuit, but his voice carried clearly as he detailed years of extortion and violence. "And what happened when businesses couldn't pay?" the prosecutor asked. "They'd start with threats," Andre said. "Then accidents, fires, break-ins. Sometimes people disappeared." Price's lawyer stood. "Objection, speculation." "Overruled," the judge replied. "Continue, Mr. Burton." A commotion erupted at the courtroom doors. 3 men in suits burst in, making a beeline for Andre. Detective Santos moved first, tackling one while courthouse security grabbed another. The third reached into his jacket. "Gun!" someone shouted. I reacted without thinking, grabbing the heavy law book from the bench in front of me and hurling it. It caught the gunman in the face just as Poppy, sitting behind him, swept his legs. He went down hard, weapon skittering across the floor. "Order!" The judge's gavel crashed down. "Clear the courtroom." As security dragged the would-be assassins away, I caught Price smirking. He thought this was a victory, showing what happened to people who testified against him, even if the attempt failed. "Court will resume tomorrow," the judge announced. "Mr. Burton will be placed in protective custody." Outside, Detective Santos pulled me aside. "That wasn't random. Someone leaked the testimony schedule." "I know," I said. "And I know who." I showed her my phone, a series of texts Poppy had intercepted between Price's lawyer and someone called the director. "There's another level," I explained. "Someone above Price, someone with enough power to infiltrate the courthouse. You need to let us handle this, Santos warned. You've done enough. Have I? I nodded toward the TV in the courthouse lobby, where news crews were reporting on the assassination attempt. They're still hurting people, still running games, just more carefully now. Yolanda. I found something in my father's journals. I cut her off. Notes about a private club in the mountains, ultra exclusive. He wrote that the real power players, the ones who controlled everything, they only played there. The Summit Club, Dean said, joining us. I heard whispers about it when I worked for Russell. Once a year, the biggest game in the country. Invitation only. And, Santos asked. And this year's game is next week. I pulled out an envelope. Price's lawyer had this in his briefcase. Poppy copied it before the trial. Inside was an ornate invitation and a key card. Absolutely not, Santos said. This is way too dangerous. More dangerous than letting them continue, I challenged. They tried to kill Andre in open court. What happens to the next person who stands up to them? She's right. Poppy chimed in, laptop open. I've been tracking their pattern. Every time we shut down one operation, 2 more pop up, like a hydra. Then you cut off the head, Dean said quietly. We all looked at him. The Summit Club, he continued. It's not just about poker. It's where they make the real decisions. Territory, operations, who lives, who dies. And now we have a way in, I added. Santos ran a hand through her hair. Even if I wanted to help, I couldn't authorize an operation based on a stolen invitation. The evidence would be inadmissible. Who said anything about evidence? I smiled. We're just going to play poker. With what money? Santos demanded. These games run in the millions. Actually, Poppy turned her laptop around. Remember Price's private accounts? The ones we found during the raid? They're still active, and I know how to access them. That's illegal, Santos pointed out, using a criminal's own money to bring down his organization. I shrugged. Sounds like karma, to me. A court officer approached. Detective, they need you for the incident report. Santos gave me a hard look. We'll discuss this later. After she left, Dean leaned in. You're really going to do this? No, I corrected. We're going to do this. One last game. The biggest one yet, Poppy added. I touched my father's ring, remembering his last entry in the journal. Sometimes the hardest part isn't playing the cards you're dealt. It's knowing when to deal a new hand entirely. The Summit Club is in 3 days, I said. Poppy, I need everything. Blueprints, security details, player profiles. Dean, you're my inside man again. And I need to make a call. To who? Dean asked. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized from my father's journal. It rang twice. Hello? A gruff voice answered. Jack, this is Sylvester's daughter. I need to ask you about dealing at the Summit Club. There was a long pause. I wondered when you'd call. Your father said you would, someday. I looked at my friends. At the courtroom, where Andre had finally found his courage. At the future we were about to reshape. Let's talk, I said. The Summit Club lived up to its name. A glass and steel fortress perched on a mountain peak, accessible only by private road. Jack, my father's old friend, met us at the service entrance. Your father would be proud, he said, adjusting my dealer's bow tie, and terrified. That's what everyone keeps saying. I checked my reflection. The uniform fit perfectly, making me look like just another high-end casino employee. Remember, Jack said, these people aren't just rich, they're dangerous. One wrong move. I know. I touched my father's ring, now serving as my only good luck charm. Is everything set? He nodded. You're dealing the main event, just like we practiced. In my ear, Poppy's voice crackled. Security systems are looped. Dean's in position at the bar. Detective Santos has units standing by. I took a deep breath and entered the main floor. The Summit Club made Price's operation look like a kid's poker night. Billion-dollar deals were being made at the bar. International criminals mingled with corrupt politicians. And at the center of it all, the high-stakes table where I'd be dealing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jack announced to the gathered players, "our main event begins in 5 minutes, 10 million minimum buy-in." I took my position, shuffling cards with the precision my father had drilled into me since childhood. One by one, the players arrived: a tech billionaire, a drug kingpin, a senator, and finally, him, the director, the man whose name appeared in every encrypted message, every secret document we'd uncovered. "The game is no limit Texas Hold'em," I announced, keeping my voice steady. "Good luck." The first few hands went smoothly. I dealt with mechanical precision, watching as millions changed hands. Through my earpiece, I could hear Poppy recording everything, Dean collecting conversations at the bar. Then the director won a massive pot with a bluff. "Impressive," the tech billionaire said, "almost as impressive as your handling of the Price situation." "Price got sloppy," the director replied, "letting that dealer's daughter dismantle his operation. Amateur hour." My hands didn't falter as I dealt the next hand, but my heart raced. "Speaking of Price," the senator leaned in, "what's the status of our witness problem?" "Being handled," the director smiled. "By now, Mr. Burton should be experiencing an unfortunate accident in protective custody." The cards slipped from my hands, scattering across the table. "I'm so sorry," I said, reaching to gather them. But the director caught my wrist. "You know," he said quietly, "you have your father's tells. Everything happened at once." The director reached inside his jacket. Dean shouted a warning from the bar, and I made my play. "Now!" I yelled. The lights cut out. In the darkness, I flipped the table, sending chips and cards flying. Shouts and chaos erupted as federal agents stormed in from every entrance. "Federal agents!" Detective Santos's voice boomed. "Everyone on the ground." The director tried to run, but found Jack blocking his path. One solid punch from my father's old friend, and the director went down. When the lights came back on, the scene was almost beautiful. Dozens of the world's most untouchable criminals, face down on custom carpets, while agents cuffed them. "You okay?" Dean asked, helping me up. "Andre?" I had to know. "Safe," Poppy confirmed through the earpiece. The attempt failed. Santos's team intercepted them. The director glared at me as agents led him away. "You have no idea what you've done." "Actually, I do." I pulled out my father's deck of cards. "I finished what my father started. He knew about this place, about all of you. He kept records, built evidence, waited for the right moment." "And what?" The director laughed. "You're his revenge." "No." I dealt one final hand. 4 aces, face up. "I'm his justice." Outside, sunrise painted the mountain gold. Detective Santos handed me a coffee as we watched the parade of arrests, the evidence Poppy gathered, plus the recorded conversations. She shook her head. "This will take down operations in 12 countries." "Good." I shuffled my father's cards one last time, then handed them to her. "Evidence locker, along with his journals." "What will you do now?" I looked at Dean and Poppy, who were already arguing about their next project. Thought about the message Andre had sent through his lawyer. "Thank you for showing me what real courage looks like." "I think," I said, "I'll deal a new hand." Santos smiled. "Your father really would be proud." "I know." I touched his ring one last time, then turned toward the sunrise. But more importantly, I am. Behind us, the Summit Club stood empty, its tables silent, its secrets exposed to the dawn. Sometimes, I realized, the best revenge isn't winning the game, it's changing the rules entirely.
I never thought I'd be the type to throw a massive party for something like a wedding anniversary, but here we were, James and I, gearing up to celebrate 15 years together. Our story wasn't one for the fairy tales, but it was ours, filled with ups and downs, laughter, and the occasional shouting match over who forgot to take out the trash. Our anniversary was shaping up to be a bash like no other. We decided on a theme that was a bit out there, think vibrant, loud, and in your face, just like the love we had for each other. I found myself in a pink wedding dress that screamed more bubblegum pop star than blushing bride, while James was practically glowing in a suit so red, you'd think he'd stolen it from a flamenco dancer. "Look at us, Ella," James chuckled as he twirled me around in our living room. "We're a walking Valentine's Day card." I couldn't help but laugh. "Yeah, well, you love it. And you know this dress makes me look good." The doorbell rang, signaling the start of the chaos. Our place was soon filled with over 130 of our closest friends, acquaintances, and a few folks I swear I'd never seen before in my life. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and everyone seemed to be having the time of their lives. "Hey, Ella!" shouted my friend Liz over the din of the crowd. "I brought someone I want you to meet. This is Tina, she's a model." Tina was striking, with an air about her that screamed, "I'm used to being the center of attention." I could see why Liz was so eager to introduce us. "Nice to meet you," I said, offering a smile that I hoped didn't look too strained. "The pleasure's all mine," Tina replied, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on James. "And who's this dashing gentleman?" Before I could answer, James slid up beside me, his arm wrapping around my waist. "I'm the lucky guy who gets to call Ella my wife." "And you are?" "Tina," she said, her smile a little too friendly for my liking. I noticed the way James's gaze lingered on her a bit too long, but I brushed it off. Jealousy wasn't a good look on me, and besides, James was just being polite, right? As the night went on, I found myself watching them from across the room. They were laughing about something, and I felt a twinge of something ugly in my gut. Shaking my head, I turned back to the group I was chatting with, determined not to let it bother me. As the night wound down, James pulled me aside, his eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and something I couldn't quite place. "Babe, I've been thinking, what if we got ourselves something special for the anniversary? Something big, something like a new car." I raised an eyebrow. "A new car?" "James, you know we've got to be sensible with our spending." He was quick to reassure me. I know, but think about it. It's not just any car. It's a statement, a way to mark our 15 years. Plus, with your photography gigs and my job, we can handle it. What do you say?" After a bit of back and forth, his enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself nodding in agreement. "Okay, let's do it. But you owe me big time for this," I said, half joking. The weeks after our anniversary bash flew by in a blur of work and routine, but something was off. James's late nights at the office started stacking up like unpaid bills. "Working late again?" I'd ask over the phone, trying not to let the skepticism seep into my voice. "Yeah, babe, you know how it is. End of quarter crunch," he'd respond, his voice a mix of fatigue and something else I couldn't quite pin down. I wanted to believe him, really, I did. But doubt is like a small leak in a dam, ignore it, and before you know it, you're underwater. One evening, as I was putting away laundry, I found a receipt in the pocket of James's jacket. It was for a pair of earrings, the kind that you don't buy on a whim unless you're feeling particularly generous or guilty. My heart sank, but I shoved the receipt into my pocket, deciding to confront James about it later. When he finally came home, the clock had already given up on waiting and settled into the early hours of the morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the receipt lying between us like a challenge. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice steady, but my hands betraying me with their tremble. James looked at the receipt, then at me, his expression a mix of confusion and alarm. "Oh, that. It's, a surprise for you." "Yeah, a surprise," he stammered, his usual smooth talk failing him. "A surprise?" I echoed, the word tasting bitter. "And you thought the best way to surprise me was to leave the receipt where I'd find it?" He ran a hand through his hair, a sign I'd come to recognize as him gearing up to smooth things over. "Babe, I wanted to get you something special, you know? To make up for all the late nights. I was gonna surprise you this weekend." I wanted to melt, to let his words wash over me and erase the doubt. But the nagging voice in my head wasn't having it. "James, you think a pair of earrings can make up for the fact that you're practically a ghost around here? What's really going on?" James sighed, the weight of the conversation pulling him down into the chair opposite me. Ella, I swear, there's nothing going on. Work's just been a nightmare, and I thought a nice gift would show you how much I appreciate you sticking by me. I studied him, searching his face for the truth. Part of me screamed to dive into the fight, to push until the dam broke, but another part, the part that remembered all the years of love and laughter, urged caution. Okay, James. I'll let it go. But just know, I'm not blind. If there's something you're not telling me, it's gonna come out sooner or later. James reached across the table, taking my hands in his. There's nothing, Ella. I promise. Just work being a pain in the ass. And you're right, I could have thought the surprise through a bit better. The next day, I found myself watching James, looking for signs that I'd either been right to worry or foolish to doubt. He was his usual self, affectionate and slightly annoying in the way that had first drawn me to him. But every time his phone buzzed or he laughed a little too loudly at a text, I felt that twinge of doubt again. Who's that keeping you so entertained? I asked during dinner, trying to keep my tone light and teasing. Just some guy from work. You know, office banter, James replied, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Must be some banter, I muttered, pushing my food around my plate. James put his phone down, his face serious. Ella, look at me. I love you. You're the only one. These late nights, the stress, it's all for us. For our future. Can you just trust me on this? I looked into his eyes, searching for the reassurance I so desperately needed. I'm trying, James. I really am. But it's hard when it feels like you're miles away even when you're right here. Coming home to an empty house wasn't new, James's late returns had set a precedent. But this silence was different, oppressive, echoing off the walls with a cold finality that sent a chill down my spine. The usual clutter of James's daily life was gone. His shoes weren't tossed haphazardly by the door, his coat wasn't draped over the chair, and the faint scent of his cologne had vanished into thin air. Panic set in, a gnawing, relentless beast that clawed at my chest. I called his phone, each ring slicing a bit deeper into my hope. Then he picked up, and his voice, once the sound of comfort, was now a harbinger of dread. James, where the hell are you? What's going on? I demanded, my voice a mix of fear and anger. Ella, he began, his tone casual, almost nonchalant. I'm glad you called. Saves me the trouble of explaining later. Explaining what? My heart raced, each beat a loud drum against my ribcage. I'm leaving, Ella. I've left, actually. Do you remember Tina? I fell in love with her like a boy. It's better this way. His words were a punch to the gut, leaving me gasping for air. Better? You think destroying our life is better? He sighed, a sound of irritation rather than remorse. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Ella. It's done. I'm with her now. She's pregnant. Pregnant? The world tilted, a sickening spin that had me reaching for the back of a chair. And you think that justifies this? What about us, James? What about everything we've built together? Ella, we've drifted apart. You know it as well as I do. This is just the final step. I've moved on. You should too. His coldness was a blade, each word twisting deeper. And what about our debts of $700,000? The car? The house? You're just going to leave me with all that? There was a pause, a moment of silence that spoke volumes. I took the car. Consider it a parting gift. As for the rest, well, you'll figure it out. You always do. A parting gift? I echoed, incredulity painting my words. You cheat, you leave, and you steal from me, and that's your idea of a gift? Look, Ella, I didn't answer you to argue. Just take care of the paperwork, will you? Make it easy for both of us. The callousness in his voice was the final straw. Easy? You want easy, James? There's nothing easy about betrayal. You'll get what's coming to you, I promise that. He laughed, a sound so foreign and cruel. Always the dramatic one, Ella. Take care of yourself. Goodbye. The line went dead, a stark end to 15 years of love, laughter, and shared dreams. I stood there, phone in hand, a storm of emotions raging within. Anger, betrayal, sorrow, they all melded into a fierce resolve. After James dropped that bomb on me and vanished, leaving nothing but his shadow and a pile of broken promises, I found myself staring at the divorce papers he left behind. They were just sitting there on the kitchen table, as if mocking me. With a heavy heart and hands that couldn't stop shaking, I signed them. Took those papers to court like I was delivering my own heart in a box. That betrayal, it did something to me. I couldn't work, couldn't think straight. All I did was sit around, trapped in my own head with thoughts that ran in circles like rats in a maze. It was like my body just gave up on me, couldn't handle the stress of it all. Before I knew it, I was knocked flat with some serious illness. Needed surgery and everything. Thank the stars for insurance, 'cause it covered everything. Without it, I'd have been sunk deeper into a hole I couldn't claw out of. My folks, bless them, they didn't know at first. But when they found out, they came rushing over. Didn't matter that we hadn't been talking much or that they had their own pile of troubles. They just showed up. My mom and dad, taking turns caring for me, making sure I ate something, and keeping the house from falling apart around me. When they found out what James had done, the air got thick with anger and worry. But they were there for me, through and through. Can't believe that snake, my dad muttered one day, his voice low but filled with a fury I hadn't heard in years. Leaving you like this, in such a mess. My mom, always the softer one, would just hold me close. We're here, baby. We're gonna get through this together, she'd say, her words a balm on my broken heart. I was drowning in gratitude for them. Without their help, I don't know how I would have made it. Slowly, with their support, I started pulling myself out of that pit of despair. Started feeling bits and pieces of myself knitting back together. It wasn't easy, getting back to work. First day back, I remember standing outside, my hand on the door, taking deep breaths like I was about to dive underwater. You can do this, I whispered to myself, over and over, like a mantra. Inside, it was like stepping into a different world. The familiar faces, the smell of coffee in the air, it was all the same, but I felt like I was seeing it from the other side of a glass wall. You good, Ella? One of my coworkers asked, eyeing me with a mix of concern and curiosity. Yeah, just getting back into the swing of things, I replied, forcing a smile that felt like it cost me everything. But day by day, it got a bit easier. The routine of work, the focus it demanded, it gave me something else to think about besides James and the colossal mess he left behind. My parents, they were my rock, my safe harbor in the storm. They saved me, in more ways than one. Just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, Liz, yeah, the same one who unknowingly threw my life into a tailspin by bringing Tina around, gave me a buzz one lazy afternoon. Ella, you won't believe what I just found out, Liz blurted out, barely letting me get a hello in. I braced myself, not sure I was in the mood for more surprises. What's up, Liz? What did you find out now? That model, Tina? She was already pregnant when she met James at our party. James got played, big time. Liz's voice was a mix of shock and, oddly, a hint of satisfaction. I paused, letting the news sink in. A part of me, the part that was still nursing a broken heart and a bruised ego, couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. So, he left me for a lie? Can't say I'm sad to hear that. Right? But listen, Ella, this is your chance. You need to fight back, get what's yours. Have you thought about talking to a lawyer? Liz's tone turned serious, all business now. I hadn't, not really. The thought of diving into legal battles on top of everything else felt overwhelming. But Liz had a point. I guess it's worth a shot. I'll look into it, thanks, Liz. Finding a lawyer felt like stepping into another world. But I lucked out, finding one who didn't just see me as another case number. So, you're telling me the car, the one James took off in, it's in your name? The lawyer asked, his eyebrows raised in what I read as a good sign. Yeah, everything's in my name. The house, the car. I never thought he'd just bail on me like this. I explained, the reality of my situation settling in. The lawyer nodded, scribbling some notes. Good. That makes things a lot simpler. You have every right to that car, and the house. We can definitely work with this. But it wasn't enough to know I'd won. As I sat there, the reality of my situation sinking in, a plan began to take shape. James thought he could upend my life and ride off into the sunset with his mistress and my car. I don't think so. The day I walked into the police station, my heart was racing, but my resolve was ironclad. I never thought I'd file a report against James, but here I was, reporting the car he stole, the car that legally belonged to me. It felt surreal, like a scene from a movie I never wanted to star in. Yet, there was a sense of righteousness in taking this step, a declaration that I wasn't going to be a victim of his selfishness any longer. Weeks passed in a blur after that. I found solace in my work and the support of my friends and family, slowly rebuilding the life James had tried to tear down. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. Seeing James's name flash on the screen sent a jolt of surprise through me. Ella, please, you have to help me. James's voice was frantic, a stark contrast to the cool detachment he'd shown during our last conversation. Help you? I echoed, my voice cold. Why on earth would I do that? I've been arrested, Ella. For stealing the car. Your car. They're saying it's grand theft auto. You have to withdraw your claim. Please, I'm begging you. He pleaded, desperation seeping through every word. The news hit me with a mix of shock and, I'll admit, a tinge of satisfaction. You want me to bail you out? After everything you've done? I asked, incredulous. Ella, I'm sorry. I know I messed up, but this is serious. I could go to jail, he said, his voice breaking. That's the point, James. Actions have consequences. You chose to leave, to steal from me, and now you face the music, I replied, my decision firm. There was a pause, and I could almost hear him scrambling for words. Ella, please. I didn't think it would come to this. That's always been your problem, James. You never think things through, I said, the months of frustration and heartache boiling down to this moment of clarity. Before I hung up, there was one more thing I needed him to know. Oh, and James? Your precious Tina was already pregnant at our anniversary. Not with your child, but nice try. You played yourself. Silence. The kind that screams louder than words ever could. I knew I had him. The realization, the truth of his situation and the lies he'd been living, finally hitting home. James tried to speak, to respond, but nothing came out. I didn't need to hear his excuses or his apologies anymore. I had said my piece. The courtroom was chilly, a stark contrast to the heat of the emotions bubbling inside me. I sat there, back straight, heart pounding, as the judge flipped through the documents laid out before him. James sat across the room, his lawyer whispering in his ear, but the cocky assurance he once carried like a cloak had vanished. Now, he looked smaller somehow, diminished. Mrs. Carter, you brought forth charges of theft against Mr. James Carter, alleging he unlawfully took possession of a vehicle registered in your name, is that correct? The judge asked, his voice carrying through the silent courtroom. Yes, Your Honor. That's correct, I replied, my voice steady, despite the tremor I felt inside. James's lawyer stood up, a sleek man with a too-sharp suit and a too-smooth voice. Your Honor, Mr. Carter maintains that this was a misunderstanding. The vehicle in question was a family asset, and he believed he had every right to its use. The judge nodded, seemingly unimpressed. Mr. Carter, do you have any documents to prove your claim to the vehicle? James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. No, Your Honor. But nothing. I cut in before I could stop myself. The car was mine. Registered in my name, paid for with my money. He took it without my consent. That's theft. The room went quiet. The judge looked at me, then at James, his gaze lingering. It seems clear to me that Mrs. Carter has provided sufficient evidence to support her claim. Mr. Carter, your actions constitute theft. You unlawfully took something that didn't belong to you. James's lawyer tried to interject, but the judge raised his hand, silencing him. I'm ruling in favor of Mrs. Carter. Mr. Carter, you are to return the vehicle immediately to Ms. Foster and compensate for any damages incurred during this period. Furthermore, you will pay a fine for the unlawful possession of the vehicle. James looked like he'd been slapped. He turned to me, his eyes pleading. Ella, please. I shook my head, cutting him off. Justice, James. That's all I wanted. You can't just take what you want without consequences. The judge banged his gavel, marking the end of the proceedings. Court is adjourned. As I walked out of the courtroom, a weight lifted off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the car or the money. It was about standing up for myself, about showing James, and maybe even myself, that I wasn't someone who could be walked over. I had fought for my rights, and I had won. I turned my phone on, messages and calls flooding in. Friends, family, even co-workers who'd heard about the trial were reaching out, their words a mix of congratulations and relief. I smiled, typing out replies, feeling a sense of community and support I hadn't realized was there. Justice served, huh? Liz's text popped up, a smiley face at the end. Yeah, justice served. I replied, a smile spreading across my face. After everything settled down from the trial, my life took a turn I never expected. It was like I finally woke up from a long, bad dream and decided I wasn't going to spend one more minute stuck in the past. I let go of all the pain and anger that James had caused me. It wasn't easy, but day by day, I felt lighter, more myself. I heard through the grapevine that James's life took a nosedive after the trial. His reputation was shot, and he got canned from his job. Turns out, word gets around fast, and no one wanted to hire a guy known for pulling the kind of stunt he did. Last I heard, he and that mistress of his called it quits. Karma's a real thing, I guess. One day, Liz dropped by my new place, her eyes wide as she took in the cozy setup. This is nice, Ella. Really nice. I smiled, handing her a cup of coffee. Thanks. Sold the old apartment and the car. Paid off every last cent of that loan. It's like I'm starting fresh, you know? Liz nodded, sipping her coffee. And the mortgage? Way more manageable. Got myself a sweet deal on this place. It's smaller but just what I need. I took a deep breath, feeling genuinely content for the first time in ages. So, what's next for you? Liz asked, a curious glint in her eyes. I leaned back, a grin spreading across my face. Travel. I've got a list of places I want to see, and experiences I want to, well, experience. Life's too short to stay put. Liz laughed, clinking her cup against mine. That's the spirit. You deserve all the adventure and happiness in the world, Ella. And I did travel. I saw beaches with sand so white it hurt your eyes, cities buzzing with life and lights, mountains that touched the sky, and forests so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat. Each place I visited, I left a piece of the old me behind and found a bit of the new me waiting. During my travels, I'd often chat with fellow travelers, sharing stories and laughs. One evening, sitting around a fire on a beach somewhere I never thought I'd find myself, a guy with a kind smile and eyes full of stories asked me, "What's the biggest thing you've learned from all your travels?" I thought about it, the fire crackling, the waves whispering secrets to the shore. I learned that no matter how hard things get, there's always a way out, a path to something better. You just gotta be brave enough to take the first step. He nodded. Sounds like you've been through a lot. I smiled, the stars reflecting in my eyes. Yeah, but look at me now. Traveling the world, living my best life. Turns out, the toughest times really do lead to the best beginnings. It was a regular Thursday evening when my world started to tilt on its axis, not that I knew it then. I'm Sarah, by the way, a 40-year-old woman who thought she had everything figured out, a loving husband, Mark, a beautiful daughter, Lily, and a stable job that helped keep our lives comfortably afloat. Mark and we've been together since our college days. Both of us were economics nerds, met in a class that I can barely remember the name of now, but what I do remember is how Mark made me feel. He was all charm, with a wit that could light up the dullest of lectures. Fast forward through graduation, a wedding, several job changes, and here we are, 15 years later, settled in a cozy house with our 10-year-old bundle of joy, and life was, well, normal. That Thursday, I was in the kitchen, trying to decide if I should attempt to salvage the burnt edges of the lasagna or just give up and order pizza, when Mark walked in. He looked like he'd just lost his best friend. Slumped shoulders, eyes downcast, and that line between his brows that only showed up when he was really stressed. "Hey, you okay?" I asked, putting down the spatula and wiping my hands on the towel. Mark just shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "It's nothing. Just a rough day at work." I knew Mark. Rough days at work had him ranting about his boss or the latest office politics. This was different. "Come on, spill. I can tell it's more than just work. What's up?" He hesitated, then finally looked up at me. It's my dad." I frowned. "Your dad? But you barely talk about him." "What about him?" "That's just it, Sarah. He's sick. Really sick. Needs a lot of money for treatment." The news hit me like a brick. In all our years together, Mark rarely mentioned his biological father. He was raised by his stepdad, a fact I knew, but his real dad? It was almost like he didn't exist. Until now. Sick? But how? What kind of sick? I was full of questions, my mind racing with concern and confusion. Mark slumped into a chair, looking defeated. "It's bad, Sarah. Some rare condition. Treatment's gonna cost an arm and a leg." I took a deep breath, trying to process the information. Okay. We'll figure it out. We have some savings, right? We can start there. Mark looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes that quickly faded. "It's not enough. It's gonna drain everything we have and then some." I paced the kitchen, my mind whirring. This was big. Our savings were meant for emergencies, sure, but this was huge. And yet, seeing Mark so broken, so desperate to help his father, a man I knew next to nothing about, it tugged at something in me. "Look, we'll make it work." "We always do," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We can tighten the belt, cut back on some things. Your dad needs this, right?" Mark nodded, looking up with those eyes that always seemed to see right through me. "Thanks, Sarah. I knew I could count on you. But it's a lot. I don't know how to deal with all this." We talked late into the night, hashing out our finances, trying to come up with a plan. It was tough, tougher than anything we'd faced before. But we were a team, Mark and I. We'd get through this together, somehow. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings with doctors, and financial planning. Mark was on edge, snapping at little things, which wasn't like him. But I chalked it up to the stress, the weight of his father's illness hanging over us like a dark cloud. The financial strain was one thing, but it was the emotional toll that really started to wear us down. Mark became more withdrawn, and I found myself walking on eggshells around him, trying to keep the peace while juggling our budget to make ends meet. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Mark and I sat down at the kitchen table, a pile of bills and our laptop open to our bank account in front of us. The air was heavy, charged with an unspoken anxiety as we tried to figure out our next move. Mark broke the silence, his voice low and strained. "We need more money, Sarah. It's just not enough. Dad's treatment is more expensive than we thought." I rubbed my temples, feeling the onset of a headache. I know, Mark, but we're stretched thin as it is. We've cut back on everything we can. There's just no more to give. That's when Mark dropped the bombshell. What about your apartment? The one you inherited from your mom. If we sell that. I felt my heart stop for a second. Sell the apartment? Mark, you know that's for Lily. We promised we'd keep it for her future. Mark slammed his fist on the table, making me jump. Damn it, Sarah. This is my dad we're talking about. Your mother's gone, and Lily's got us. My dad has nobody else. I recoiled, shocked by his outburst. Lower your voice, Mark. Lily might hear, I hissed, my own temper flaring. And don't you dare bring my mom into this. That apartment is all I have left of her, plus it's our safety net. Our daughter's safety net. You can't ask me to give that up. Mark stood up, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. So what? My dad's life isn't worth as much as a damn apartment? Is that it? That's not fair, and you know it. I shot back, standing my ground. It's not about worth. It's about keeping our promise to our daughter. It's about not sacrificing our future for. For what, Sarah? For my dad? Just say it. You think he's not worth the trouble? The accusation in his voice cut me deep. Mark, stop it. This isn't about worth. It's about being rational. There has to be another way. We can't just upend our lives, Lily's future, on a whim. A whim? Mark laughed bitterly. You think my dad's dying is a whim? No, of course not. I mean, we should think about all our options. Not make rash decisions. Mark shook his head, his expression one of utter defeat. You just don't get it, do you? It's like you don't even care. I do care, Mark. I care about all of us. But selling the apartment isn't the solution. It's not just about the money. It's about what we're teaching our daughter, about family, about making hard choices. For a moment, there was silence, both of us breathing heavily, the weight of our argument hanging in the air. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice cold and distant. I need some air. And with that, he grabbed his coat and walked out, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen, surrounded by unpaid bills and a marriage that felt like it was starting to crumble. The rest of the night was a blur. I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning, replaying our argument over and over in my head. Was I being unreasonable? Was I putting material things over family? But then, wasn't Lily our family too? Wasn't her future just as important? After what felt like ages, Mark and I finally found a way to patch things up. It was one of those late-night talks where you lay everything out on the table, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We were both drained, emotionally spent, but determined to get past this hurdle. I wanted to believe we could find our way back to each other, to the love that had once been so strong. In a bid to bridge the gap between us, I suggested, why don't we go see your dad together? It might be good for you, for us. Mark's reaction was odd, to say the least. He fidgeted, avoided my gaze, and mumbled, it's not possible right now. How come? I pressed, my brow furrowing in confusion. His vague response didn't sit right with me, but before I could dig deeper, life decided to throw another curveball my way. Just a few days later, as I was making my way back from work, lost in thought about everything that had been happening, a car came out of nowhere. The impact was sudden, shocking, leaving me dazed and in pain on the cold pavement. The next thing I knew, I was in the hospital, diagnosed with a concussion. The doctors said I needed long-term treatment, which meant more time off work, more bills, and more stress. But worse than the physical pain was the realization that Mark didn't come to visit. Not once. It was Lily who kept me company, her small, worried face a constant reminder of the strength and innocence we're supposed to protect. Mama, why hasn't Daddy come to see you? She asked one evening, her voice small in the too quiet room. I didn't know how to explain to her that I had no answer. Daddy's busy, sweetheart. But it's okay, we have each other, and Grandma's been a big help, hasn't she? She nodded, though I could tell she was far from convinced. I just wish Daddy was here too. Me too, baby, me too. I whispered, hugging her close, trying not to show my own disappointment and hurt. Lying in that hospital bed, night after night, gave me too much time to think. About Mark, about us, about the future. Something had to change. We couldn't go on like this, with secrets and silence driving a wedge between us. It wasn't just about me anymore, it was about Lily and the kind of life I wanted for her. Walking back into our home, the emptiness hit me like a cold wave. The living room, once filled with laughter and warmth, was now bare, stripped of our TV, the stereo, and even the little jewelry box that had been my grandmother's. My heart raced, a mix of fear and disbelief coursing through me. Lily clung to my side, her confusion mirroring my own. "Mom, what happened? Where's all our stuff?" Her voice was small, scared. I was struggling to make sense of it all, to find the words to explain something I couldn't understand myself. I don't know, Lily. This doesn't make any sense. Panic set in. My first thought was to call the police, report a burglary. But before I could act on that impulse, I needed to hear it from Mark, to understand if he knew what had happened. With shaking hands, I dialed his number, half hoping he wouldn't pick up, half desperate to hear his voice. "Mark? Our house, everything's gone. Did you know about this? What's going on?" There was a pause, a silence that seemed to stretch on forever before he finally spoke, his voice laced with a desperation I'd never heard before. "Sarah, please, don't call the police. I can explain. I'll be home soon. Just wait for me." The line went dead, leaving me with more questions than answers. Lily looked up at me, her eyes searching for reassurance I didn't feel. "Is Dad coming home?" "Yeah, baby, he is. He said he'd explain everything." But could I believe him? The man who hadn't been there when I needed him the most, who now claimed responsibility for the disappearance of our belongings. When Mark finally walked through the door that evening, he looked defeated, a shell of the man I once knew. I braced myself, ready to confront him, to demand the truth. He didn't wait for me to start. "I took them, Sarah. I sold everything. It was the only way I could think of to pay for my dad's treatment." His words hit me like a physical blow. "You what? How could you do this without talking to me first? Do you have any idea how scared we were?" I know, and I'm so sorry. It was wrong, but I didn't know what else to do. His condition got worse, and I just panicked." "And you couldn't even be there for me, in the hospital? Was that because of your dad too?" He looked away, the guilt evident in his posture. "Yes. I was with him. He needed me, and I thought I could handle everything. I was wrong." The room was heavy with his confession, with the weight of his choices. Part of me wanted to scream, to lash out at him for the betrayal, for the lies. But another part, a quieter, more calculating side, held back. I nodded, pretending to accept his apology, his explanation. "Okay, Mark. We'll figure this out." But as he relaxed, relieved at my apparent understanding, I knew this was far from over. Accepting his apology out loud was one thing, truly forgiving him, moving past this, was another. And deep down, I knew things couldn't go back to the way they were. Not now. I didn't call the police, not because I believed his story, but because I needed time. Time to think, to plan my next move. Mark thought he had smoothed things over, but this was a betrayal that couldn't be brushed under the rug with a simple apology. As I put Lily to bed that night, reassuring her that everything would be okay, I made a silent promise to myself. I would get to the bottom of this, uncover the full truth of Mark's actions, and protect our daughter from the fallout. After Mark's confession and his bizarre behavior, things just didn't add up for me. I decided it was time to get some outside help, so I reached out to a friend of mine, Carla, who had made a career out of uncovering truths people worked hard to bury. She was a private investigator, and if anyone could get to the bottom of this mess, it was her. "Carla, it's me," I said, my voice a mix of desperation and determination. "I need your help. Mark's been acting strange, and I think there's more going on than he's letting on." Carla, ever the professional, didn't miss a beat. "Tell me everything," she said, and I did. I spilled the beans about the missing valuables, Mark's vague explanation about his dad's health, and how none of it sat right with me. "All right, I'm on it," she assured me after I'd finished. "But you gotta be patient. These things take time." Patient. That word echoed in my mind as I hung up. Patience had never been my strong suit, but I knew Carla was right. I needed to wait for her to do her thing. However, waiting wasn't in the cards for me. A nagging thought kept tugging at the back of my mind, leading me to make a call I never thought I'd have to. I dialed Mark's mom and stepdad, trying to sound casual as I asked about the health of Mark's biological father. The silence on the other end of the line was telling. When they finally spoke, their confusion was palpable. "Sarah, dear, what are you talking about? Mark's dad passed away years ago." The floor might as well have opened up beneath me. "Years ago?" I echoed, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal swirling inside me. "Yes, I'm so sorry. Did Mark not tell you?" The concern in their voices was genuine, but it only fueled my growing sense of dread. No, he didn't. "Thanks, I've got to go," I mumbled, ending the call as quickly as I could. I sat there, phone in hand, the pieces clicking into place. All the lies, the deceit, it all made sense now. Mark had been playing me, using his dead father as a ploy to siphon off our savings for who knows what. The revelation left me reeling, but I knew I couldn't confront Mark without solid proof of where the money was actually going. And for that, I needed Carla's findings. In the meantime, I played the part of the none the wiser wife, a role that chafed with every passing moment. Mark continued on as if nothing was amiss, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Each day that passed was a test of my patience, a slow march towards the inevitable confrontation. But I was determined to wait, to gather all the ammunition I needed to face Mark with the truth. After what felt like an eternity, Carla finally called me with an update. My heart pounded in anticipation as I picked up the phone. "Sarah, we need to talk. Can you meet me at the cafe on 5th? She asked, her tone serious. "Sure, I'll be there in 20, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. Sitting across from Carla in the dimly lit cafe, the air felt heavy with unspoken truths. She slid a folder across the table towards me. "Sarah, I found quite a bit. You sure you're ready for this?" Taking a deep breath, I nodded. "I need to know, Carla. No matter how bad it is." She proceeded to lay it all out, the surveillance photos of Mark and a woman I didn't recognize, receipts for fancy dinners, hotel stays, and, most damning of all, a lease agreement for an apartment I knew nothing about. The evidence was irrefutable. Mark had been leading a double life. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper as I stared at the photos of them together, laughing, touching, sharing moments that were supposed to be reserved for us. Carla sighed. "I don't have all the details on her, but it's clear they've been seeing each other for a while. And Sarah, there's more. I think they have a child together." A child. The word echoed in my head, a cruel twist in the already painful revelation. "A child," I repeated, numb. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I can only imagine how you must feel," Carla said, her voice full of sympathy. Anger, betrayal, sadness, it was all too much. How could he do this to us? To me, to Lily? Carla reached across the table, offering a comforting hand. "I wish I had the answers, Sarah. But know this, you're not alone. You've got people who love you, who'll stand by you through this." The drive home was a blur. I was a tempest of emotions, each one vying for dominance. Betrayal stung the most, the realization that the man I had loved and trusted had deceived me in the most unimaginable way. I waited for him at home, the folder of evidence on the kitchen table, a silent witness to the unraveling of our life together. The moment he walked in, I could see the apprehension in his eyes, a clear sign he knew the reckoning had come. "Sit down, Mark. We need to talk," I said, my voice steady, belying the turmoil inside. He complied, taking a seat opposite me, avoiding my gaze. "Sarah, No." I cut him off, my hand raised to stop him. "You've lied enough. It's my turn to talk. I know about her, Mark. And the child. I know everything." Mark's face paled, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." "Sorry? You destroy our family, and all you can say is you're sorry?" My voice rose in anger, but I quickly composed myself. This wasn't about unleashing my rage, it was about getting answers and deciding where to go from here. He tried to explain, to weave a story of confusion and mistakes, but I wasn't having any of it. "Stop, Mark. Just stop. The lies end now. I want to know why. Why did you do it? Why throw away everything we had?" Mark's usual confidence was gone, replaced by a man cornered by his own deceit. "I don't know, Sarah. I got lost, caught up in something I didn't understand. I thought I could keep it separate, that it wouldn't affect us. I was wrong." "Caught up? You made choices, Mark. Choices that betrayed your family. Did you even think about Lily in all of this? What this would do to her?" He had no answer, just a shake of his head, a man defeated by his own actions. The conversation went on, circles of apologies and excuses, but it was clear, too much had been broken. Trust, once shattered, couldn't simply be glued back together. "I want a divorce, Mark. There's no coming back from this," I said, the words heavy but necessary. Mark didn't fight it, perhaps realizing the depth of his betrayal left no other path. "I'll do whatever you think is best. I hope you can find it in you to forgive me, someday. For Lily's sake." "Forgiveness? That's a long road, Mark. Right now, I need to think about Lily and me, about how we move forward from this mess you've made." As he left the house that night, it felt like the closing of a long, tumultuous chapter. The confrontation had been painful, yes, but it was also the first step towards a new beginning, a chance to rebuild and find happiness again, free from the shadows of deception. After the dust settled on the courtroom battles, I found myself sitting across from Lily at our kitchen table, the weight of the last few months seemingly lifted off our shoulders. The judge had ruled in our favor, acknowledging the depth of betrayal and deceit Mark had entangled us in. He was ordered to pay a hefty sum for his infidelity, the lies about his father's health, and for all the things he'd taken and sold from our home. "Mom, does this mean it's all over now?" Lily asked, her spoon paused midair over her cereal bowl. I nodded, stirring my coffee, the steam curling up like the complicated emotions I felt. "Yes, baby, it's over. We can start fresh now." Lily smiled, a genuine, relieved smile that reached her eyes. "Good. I didn't like seeing you so sad." Later that day, I took a moment for myself, sitting in the quiet of our living room. The legal victory was bittersweet. Yes, Mark was being held accountable, financially at least, for the chaos he'd caused. But no amount of money could erase the betrayal or the impact it had on Lily and me. I heard from mutual friends that Mark and his new family were struggling, the financial strain causing constant arguments. It was a situation he'd brought on himself, choosing a path of deceit that led him away from us and into turmoil. His parents, once a part of our extended family, had cut ties with him, disgusted by his actions and the lies about his deceased father. It was a harsh reality, but one Mark had sculpted with his choices. As for me, I focused on rebuilding our lives, ensuring Lily felt secure and loved, something money couldn't buy. One evening, as Lily and I were arranging some new books on our shelves, a symbol of our new beginnings, she turned to me and said, "Mom, I'm glad we're together, just us. It feels right." Her words warmed my heart, echoing my thoughts. Me too, Lily. We've got each other, and that's all that matters. Our journey hadn't been easy, and I knew challenges lay ahead. But as I looked at our little home, filled with love and laughter, I felt a sense of peace. We were moving forward, not just surviving but thriving, on our own terms. Art's not just about colors and shapes, it's about pouring your soul onto a blank canvas. I often say to my students, "My name's Judy, and I built my life around this belief." Running a watercolor painting school wasn't just a job for me, it was my calling, a place where I could share my love and passion for art with kids who saw the world in a kaleidoscope of colors. My journey wasn't a solo trip. Beside me was Ethan, my husband of 10 years. Despite the love that bound us, life threw us a curveball we never saw coming. One evening, after a long day of classes, Ethan and I sat down for our ritual of sharing our day over a cup of tea. The conversation shifted, as it often did, to the topic that lingered like a shadow over our happiness: no kids. "Any news from the doctor?" Ethan asked, his voice a mix of hope and dread. I hesitated, the lie I had prepared sitting heavily on my tongue. "Yeah, everything's fine. We just need to keep trying," I said, forcing a smile. The truth was far more complicated, but I couldn't bear to crush his hope with the reality of his infertility. So, I chose silence over truth, a decision that weighed on me more with each passing day. After shelving the dream of having my own kids, I poured everything into those classes, drawing and painting with kids who had more energy than a pack of puppies. They soaked up love like little sponges, and in return, filled a gap in my heart I didn't know how to fill myself. Meanwhile, home life with Ethan started to feel like living with a ghost. He drifted further away, lost in a fog I couldn't penetrate. First, he just seemed out of it, then the booze got a grip on him. Before I knew it, he was out of a job, and we were out of sync. But I wasn't about to bail. No way. I stood by him, thick and thin, through counseling sessions that felt more like tug-of-war than therapy. "Ethan, this isn't you," I'd say, trying to reach him, to pull him back from wherever he was slipping away to. "You're stronger than this. We can beat this together." But it was like talking to a wall. And when he finally decided to switch careers, I didn't think twice about footing the bill. "It's a fresh start, babe. I believe in you," I encouraged, clinging to a hope that felt more fragile with each passing day. The school became my refuge, a place where I could lose myself in the laughter and chaos of kids painting their dreams. Mia, my right-hand woman at the school, kept the ship sailing smoothly, or as smoothly as one could with a crew of pint-sized Picassos. "Hey, Judy, you need to see this," Mia called out one afternoon, her voice cutting through the din of the classroom. I walked over, expecting another paint spill or a marker masterpiece on the wall. Instead, she was grinning, holding up a drawing one of the kids had done. "Look, it's you, superhero style. Cape and all." I couldn't help but laugh, the image of me as a superhero, cape flying, wielding a paintbrush like a sword, brightening my day. "Guess I need to add saving the world, one painting at a time, to my resume," I joked. Mia's laughter joined mine, a moment of lightness in the midst of my jumbled life. But as the laughter faded, the weight of reality settled back on my shoulders. Ethan's struggles at home were a stark contrast to the joy and simplicity I found at the school. One evening, after a particularly long day, I found Ethan on the couch, a bottle in hand, staring blankly at the TV. The sight was becoming all too familiar, and my patience was wearing thin. "Ethan, we talked about this. Drinking isn't going to help anything," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. He just shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes of his resignation. "What does it matter, Judy? It's not like I'm good for much these days." The hurt in his voice cut me deep, but I was running out of ways to pull him back. "You're good for more than you know. But you've got to want to see that for yourself." Our conversations were a broken record, my words never quite reaching him. And as much as I wanted to save him, to save us, I was only one person. I couldn't carry us both, not when he wasn't willing to stand up. The gap between Ethan and me grew wider, a chasm filled with unspoken words and missed connections. And as I threw myself into my work, into the school that demanded so much of me but gave back tenfold, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing Ethan, piece by piece. As my home life started to feel more like a silent movie, the kind where you can see the mouths moving but can't hear the words, Mia, my friend and the rock star administrator of my art school, became my soundboard. She wasn't just good with the books, she had a way of making even the gloomiest days seem like a Jackson Pollock painting, messy but somehow right. Mia had this habit of popping over to my place after work, under the guise of discussing school stuff, but we both knew it was more about unwinding with a glass of wine and letting our real thoughts fly. One of these evenings, she came bouncing in with a sparkle in her eyes that wasn't just from the reflection of her ridiculously oversized earrings. "Judy, you won't believe it," she gushed, plopping down on my couch with the grace of a cat landing on a soft pillow. "What's up?" I asked, handing her a glass of wine and bracing myself for one of her tales. Mia's love life was more vibrant and dramatic than any telenovela, and honestly, a welcome distraction from my own static one. "I met someone," she beamed, the words practically dancing out of her mouth. I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. "Oh yeah? Do tell." Mia launched into a story about this new guy, how they met in the most cliché rom-com way possible, bumping into each other at a coffee shop, spilling drinks, and exchanging numbers along with apologies. But it was when she started talking about the gifts and the planned lavish getaway that my eyebrows went up. "He's taking me to this fancy resort next month. And look at this," she flaunted a piece of jewelry that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Damn, Mia. That's something," I managed, my voice a mix of genuine happiness for her and a pinch of concern. "He sounds generous." Mia laughed, a sound full of bubbles and light. "Generous and gorgeous. Girl, I hit the jackpot." I raised my glass to her. "To hitting the jackpot then. May it bring you all the happiness." But as the night wore on, and Mia's stories of grand gestures and pricey presents piled up, a nagging thought crept into my mind. It wasn't jealousy, no, it was worry. Mia was my friend, my confidant, and here she was, getting swept up in a whirlwind that sounded more like a hurricane in the making. "So, this guy, he's for real, right? I mean, all this bling and trips, it's a lot," I ventured, hoping my question didn't sound as blunt as it felt. Mia's smile didn't waver, but her eyes flicked away for just a split second. "Yeah, of course, he's real. And he's amazing, Judy. Finally, someone who knows how to treat me right." I nodded, the unease settling like sediment at the bottom of my wine glass. "Just, be careful. You're my friend, and I just want you to be happy and safe." Mia reached over, squeezing my hand. "I know, babe. And I appreciate it. But don't worry, I've got this. I'm not some damsel in distress. Lately, life's been feeling like a puzzle where the pieces don't quite fit. Ethan's been more ghost than husband, disappearing for hours, vague about where he's been or who he's been with. And then there's Mia, draped in new jewels every week, spinning tales of her mystery man's latest grand gestures. One evening, after closing up the school, Mia and I found ourselves lingering by the door, neither of us in a hurry to head home to our respective complications. "Judy, you ever get the feeling like you're missing something big? Like, there's a whole part of the picture you just can't see?" Mia asked, her usual sparkle dimmed a bit in the fading light. I chuckled, leaning against the doorframe. "Every day. Especially lately. Ethan's been acting all kinds of strange. And then there's you, with your secret admirer who's apparently allergic to public appearances." Mia rolled her eyes, but the smile she shot me was half-hearted. "He's just private, you know? But yeah, I get what you mean. Secrets everywhere. The air between us was thick with unsaid words. It felt like we were both skirting around the edges of a truth neither of us wanted to acknowledge. Speaking of secrets, I ventured, you ever gonna introduce us to Mr. Wonderful? I'm starting to think you made him up. Mia's laugh was a little too quick, a little too sharp. Oh, come on, Judy. Why would I make something like that up? He's real, and he's amazing. Just, complicated. Complicated how? I pressed, curiosity getting the better of me. She hesitated, then sighed, a sound heavy with things left unsaid. It's just, his situation. It's not exactly straightforward. But we're happy, and that's what matters. I nodded, though her words did little to ease the knot of concern tightening in my stomach. Just be careful, Mia. I don't like the sound of complicated. We locked up and headed our separate ways, the conversation lingering in my mind like a stubborn fog. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I didn't know about what was going on with Mia, or with Ethan, for that matter. Amidst the whirlwind of doubts and half-truths, one day Mia dropped a bombshell that made my already tangled world stop spinning for a moment. We were in the back room of the school, surrounded by paints and brushes, a scene of vibrant chaos that suddenly felt too constricting. Judy, I've got news. Mia started, an unusual hesitance in her voice that immediately put me on edge. I'm pregnant. For a moment, all I could do was stare at her, the news sinking in. Pregnant? Mia, that's huge. Congratulations. I managed, the words feeling inadequate for the magnitude of her revelation. She smiled, a mix of joy and something else I couldn't quite place. Thanks, Judy. It's a bit of a shock, but a happy one. We're excited. The word were hung in the air, heavy with implications. So, I ventured cautiously. Does this mean there's a wedding on the horizon? Mia's smile faltered, and she looked away, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Well, about that. He's still married. Needs to sort out a divorce first. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thicker. Married? I echoed, my mind racing. Mia, you're dating a married man? Her defensiveness flared up instantly. It's not like that, Judy. We love each other. He's going to leave her, it's just complicated. Complicated. There was that word again, a convenient cover for a multitude of sins. Mia, how can you think this is okay? You're messing with someone's family. That's not right. The words came out harsher than I intended, but the situation was a slap to my sense of right and wrong. Mia's face hardened, her usual openness shuddering closed. I thought you of all people would understand. It's not like I planned this. Love doesn't follow rules. Her justification stung, a reminder of the moral mazes we find ourselves in. Understanding doesn't mean agreeing, Mia. This is someone's family. Think about what you're doing. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I didn't come here for a lecture, Judy. You're my friend, you're supposed to support me. The conversation ended there, Mia storming out with a mix of anger and hurt swirling in her wake. I was left standing amidst the clutter of our shared space, feeling the distance between us stretch wider than ever. The day was supposed to be straightforward, pack, head to the airport, and catch the flight to oversee the new branch opening. But life, as I've come to learn, rarely follows the script. I was halfway to the airport when my phone buzzed with an alert. A storm warning. Great. Within minutes, another alert followed, the kind that sinks your stomach. Flight cancelled. Fantastic, I muttered, pulling over to regroup. The thought of going back home wasn't appealing, not with the tension between Ethan and me reaching new highs. But what choice did I have? Turning the car around, I decided to surprise Ethan. Maybe an unexpected afternoon together could mend some fences, or at least offer a distraction from the storm brewing outside and in our lives. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed Mia's car parked out front. Odd. She knew I was supposed to be gone. Maybe she's here for Ethan, I thought, a pang of irritation at the intrusion. I didn't bother to announce my return, curiosity pushing me to find out what was so important that Mia needed to see Ethan in my absence. The house was quiet, too quiet, as I made my way inside. The scene I stumbled upon in the living room stopped me cold. Ethan and Mia, lost in an embrace that was anything but platonic. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs, a mix of betrayal and disbelief washing over me. Ethan? My voice sounded foreign to my ears, sharp with a betrayal I never saw coming. They sprang apart, guilt and panic written all over their faces. Ethan's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out, while Mia couldn't even meet my gaze. Judy, This isn't what it looks like, Ethan finally managed, the lamest of excuses falling flat between us. I laughed, a sound bitter and hollow. Really? Because it looks pretty damn clear to me. What's going on, Ethan? Mia finally found her voice, a shaky, Judy, I'm so sorry. That did nothing to soothe the sting. Sorry? For what, Mia? For betraying me? For lying? Or for something else I'm about to find out? The questions poured out, each one laced with a pain I hadn't expected to feel. Ethan tried to approach me, hands outstretched as if to bridge the gap with a touch. Judy, please, let me explain. I stepped back, out of his reach. Save it, Ethan. I've heard enough lies to last a lifetime. Turning to leave, I couldn't resist one last question, and need to understand the depth of their deceit. How long? Their silence was answer enough. The drive to the lawyer's office was a blur, my thoughts a tornado of anger, hurt, and disbelief. How could I have been so blind? How could the two people I trusted most stab me in the back? Sitting across from the lawyer, the words spilled out, my decision final. I want a divorce, and I want it as clean and quick as possible. The lawyer nodded, his expression one of professional sympathy. We'll take care of everything, Mrs. Thompson. You won't have to deal with him directly anymore. Good, I replied, feeling a semblance of control for the first time in what felt like forever. And one more thing. Make sure he gets nothing. I've supported him enough. The ride home was a mix of tears and determination. I was done crying over a man who had so little regard for our vows, our history. It was time to rebuild, to focus on me and the things that truly mattered. The day after my world turned upside down, I decided it was time to clear the air, once and for all. I called Ethan and Mia to the living room, my resolve steel. There was no room for lies, no space for excuses. Ethan, we're gonna lay it all out now. No more hiding, no more games, I started, my voice steady but cold, echoing off the walls of the home we once shared happily. Ethan couldn't meet my eyes, his guilt a tangible presence in the room. Mia, on the other hand, looked defiant, ready for a confrontation. You, I pointed at Ethan, betrayed our marriage. You've been drowning in booze instead of facing our problems, too lazy to keep a job, let alone work on us. Ethan opened his mouth, maybe to defend himself, but no words came out. He just sat there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Then I turned to Mia, my fury unabated. And you, I brought you into my life, gave you a job, trusted you. And this is how you repay me? Mia snapped, her facade cracking. You're just jealous, Judy. Jealous because I found happiness and you couldn't stand it. Her words were like venom, but they didn't hurt me. They just showed me how deluded she really was. That's enough, I said, cutting through her tirade. I filed for divorce, Ethan. And you won't get a dime from me, thanks to your little adventure here. That's when Ethan looked up, desperation in his eyes. Judy, you can't do that. I'll fight for everything. I have a child on the way with Mia. His words were meant to wound, but I had the trump card. I laughed, a sound so sharp it silenced the room. Really, Ethan? A child? I walked over to my office, pulled out the medical reports, and slammed them on the coffee table. You might want to read this. You're infertile, Ethan. That child isn't yours. The color drained from Ethan's face as he scanned the document. Mia's eyes darted between the paper and Ethan, her confidence crumbling. What? That's impossible. You're lying. Ethan's voice was a mix of denial and fear. I wish I was, for your sake. But there it is. Mia, care to explain? I asked, though I didn't expect a truthful answer. The room erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, voices raised in a cacophony of betrayal and shattered illusions. Ethan and Mia turned on each other, their so-called love crumbling under the weight of lies and deception. I watched for a moment, the sad spectacle of their undoing, feeling a mix of sorrow and liberation. Then, without another word, I left them to their mess, stepping out of the house that no longer felt like home. After the storm that was my personal life started to settle, I turned my attention to another mess, our finances. It was time to clean house, starting with the joint account Ethan and I shared. Ignoring it had been a mistake, one I wasn't about to repeat. Digging through the statements, the betrayal took on a new form, numbers. Thousands spent on jewelry, fancy dinners, and hotels. All for his little escapades with Mia. I muttered to myself, anger simmering as I tallied the figures. The deceit didn't stop at my failed marriage. The financial records of the school revealed a similar pattern of betrayal. Mia, who I'd trusted with the day-to-day, had been skimming off the top. Payments from students that never made it to our account, but instead lined her pockets. Armed with the evidence, I met with my lawyer again. I want to press charges, I told him, sliding the bank statements and school records across his desk. Both of them, for theft. The meeting with the police was brief. I filed my report, recounting the thefts with a detached precision. The officer taking my statement looked up, surprised. You're handling this pretty well. I'm past anger, I said, the words tasting bitter. Now, I just want justice. The fallout was swift. Ethan's face when he was served with the lawsuit was a picture of shock, a look I savored. Judy, we can sort this out, he pleaded over the phone, desperation clear in his voice. Sort it out? With the police, you mean? I shot back, my patience for his lies long exhausted. Enjoy explaining your spending habits to them. Mia's reaction was equally satisfying. She came to my office, tears in her eyes, begging for forgiveness. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Judy. Please, you don't have to do this. Save it, Mia. You made your choice. Now, you get to live with it, I told her, the finality in my voice broking no argument. The legal battles were draining, but with each court date, I felt a piece of my old self return. The woman who wouldn't be taken advantage of, who stood up for herself. When the dust settled, Ethan and Mia were ordered to pay restitution. Every penny they'd stolen, every lie they'd told, it all came due. And as for me? I sold the house, cut my ties with the past, and started anew. After the whirlwind that tore through my life, I packed up my dreams and my brushes and moved to a new city. It was a fresh canvas, a place where the shadows of betrayal couldn't reach me. I poured myself into rebuilding my school, focusing on the swirls of paint and the smiles of my students to mend the fractures in my heart. Word got around, as it always does, about Ethan and Mia. Their fairy tale had crumbled, leaving behind nothing but dust and regrets. Ethan, now jobless and drowning in debts, had moved back with his parents. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity. He was just a character in a story I no longer read. As for Mia, she had her baby, a bundle of joy in a world that seemed to have turned its back on her. Last I heard, she was juggling odd jobs, trying to make ends meet. Once upon a time, I might have reached out, offered support, but that bridge was burned, the ashes scattered. In this new chapter of my life, I found solace in my work and the new faces around me. The city offered anonymity, a chance to redefine myself without the whispers of the past nipping at my heels. One evening, at a local art event, a conversation sparked up with a fellow artist, someone who knew the color of passion and the shadows of loss just as well as I did. "You've got a unique style," he said, eyeing one of my pieces. "There's a story behind these colors, isn't there?" I smiled, a genuine curve of the lips that had become too rare. Every artist has their tales. Some brighter, some darker. "What's yours?" We talked for hours, our words painting pictures of our pasts and hopes for the future. It was refreshing, talking to someone who understood the language of loss and rebirth. Moving to a new city hadn't just offered me a change of scenery. It had given me a new perspective, a chance to heal and to grow. I wasn't the same woman who had left that old life behind. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came my way with open arms and an open heart. It was a typical Thursday afternoon in the small town where I lived and worked as an administrative assistant. My life was pretty routine: wake up, work, watch some TV, and then hit the sack. At 34, I was comfortable with my quiet existence, even if it felt a bit lonely at times. I was at the local grocery store, picking up some essentials and maybe a little comfort food. That's when I bumped into Michael for the first time. Michael was the kind of guy you'd notice in a small town like ours, tall, with the kind of physique that screamed he didn't skip gym sessions. I, on the other hand, had always struggled with my weight, and my self-esteem wasn't exactly through the roof. "Oops, sorry about that," Michael said, as we collided near the frozen foods aisle. His groceries almost hit the floor, but he caught them just in time. "No worries, my fault. I was in my own world there," I replied, feeling my cheeks heat up. Why did I have to be so clumsy? "Hey, aren't you Anna from the post office?" he asked, with a curious look. "Yeah, that's me. And you are?" I knew who he was, of course. This was a small town, everyone knew everyone. But I played dumb, partly because I was surprised he knew my name. "Michael, I've seen you around. You have a great smile, you know that?" He flashed me a grin that probably melted hearts on a regular basis. I laughed, a bit too loudly. "Thanks, I guess. You're not too bad yourself," I said, instantly regretting how cheesy that sounded. "Listen, Anna, I was wondering if you'd like to grab a coffee sometime? There's this nice little place I know. It's not fancy, but the coffee's good," he suggested, his eyes locking with mine. I was taken aback. Why would someone like Michael be interested in someone like me? Sure, I'd like that," I managed to say, trying to sound casual. "Great. How about tomorrow after work?" he proposed. Walking home, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and disbelief. Michael seemed genuinely interested, but part of me wondered if it was some kind of joke. After all, why would a fit, good-looking guy like him go for someone like me? The next day, I found myself at the coffee shop, waiting nervously for Michael. I kept fidgeting with my hands, wondering if he'd actually show up. But show up he did, right on time, with that same charming smile. We ordered our coffees, and the conversation started to flow. We talked about work, about living in a small town, and about our hobbies. Michael was easy to talk to, and I forgot all about my insecurities. By the end of the evening, I felt a connection to Michael that I hadn't expected. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. A few weeks had flown by since our first coffee date, and things with Michael were moving fast, faster than I had ever anticipated. You won't believe it, but we were preparing for the wedding. We were at Giovanni's, the fanciest place in town. Michael had insisted on dinner, saying he had something important to discuss. "So, Anna," Michael began, his voice smooth as he sipped his wine. "There's something we need to sort out." I felt a lump form in my throat. "What do we need to sort out?" I asked, fearing the answer. "It's about the wedding," he said, pausing for effect. "There are some additional expenses that have come up, stuff I hadn't anticipated. And, well, I'm a bit short on cash right now." I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. This wasn't exactly the romantic scene I had envisioned. Additional expenses? How much are we talking about here? He hesitated, then blurted out, 20,000. I know it's a lot, but it's just to cover the extra stuff, you know, to make our day perfect. I nearly choked on my wine. 20,000? Michael, that's a huge amount of money. Where is all this coming from? I thought we had a budget. He reached across the table, taking my hand. I know it's a lot. But trust me, it'll be worth it. We'll have the wedding of our dreams. I just need a bit of help getting there. I pulled my hand away. Help? Michael, you're asking me to give you $20,000. That's not just a bit of help. That's a massive loan. He leaned back, his expression one of frustration. Look, Anna, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I want this wedding to be something we'll both remember forever. Isn't that worth investing in? The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. I was too caught up in my thoughts to pay much attention to the food or the forced conversation that followed. Michael's request had thrown me, but I was in love and believed him unconditionally, so I agreed. After the dinner at Giovanni's, things got weird. Michael started acting dodgy, always on his phone and making excuses when I asked about the wedding plans. I tried to shake off the feeling that something was off, telling myself it was just pre-wedding jitters. Then, 2 days after I handed over the money, I came home to an empty rented apartment. Not just empty of Michael, but of all his stuff too. It was like he'd vanished into thin air, taking his belongings with him. The only thing he left behind was a note on the kitchen table. I picked it up, my hands shaking as I read the words that would change everything. Anna. Thank you for the money, I will spend it on a wonderful trip with my girlfriend. I'm sorry, but you're too fat and ugly for me. I hope you find a guy who matches you. M. I must have read that note a dozen times, hoping the words would change, but they never did. The pain was indescribable. Betrayal, heartbreak, humiliation, it all hit me at once. And the worst part? The money was gone. All $20,000 of it. I called Lucy, my best friend, the only person I could think of who might understand. Lucy, Michael's gone. He's left me. Took all his stuff, and the money. Left a note saying he can't marry someone too fat and ugly. I choked out, feeling the sting of tears in my eyes. There was a pause on the other end of the line. That son of a... Are you okay? Do you want me to come over? I sniffled, wiping my nose with the back of my hand. Yeah. I mean, no. I'm not okay. But yes, please come over. It didn't take long for Lucy to arrive, and when she did, I was still a mess. She hugged me, letting me cry on her shoulder. This is unbelievable. How could he do this to you? After everything? Lucy was furious on my behalf. I don't know. I just feel so stupid. I gave him the money, Lucy. All of it. What am I going to do? The reality of my financial situation was starting to sink in. We'll figure something out. First, we need to get you back on your feet. Then we'll deal with the money and the rent and all that crap, Lucy said, her voice firm and reassuring. But how? I'm broke, Lucy. Completely broke. And my heart, it's just broken. The weight of everything was crushing me. We start by getting you out of this apartment. You can stay with me for a bit. And then we go to the bank, see about getting a loan or something. And, Anna, we're going to get you through this. You're stronger than you think. Lucy's words were a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. In the days that followed, I did what she suggested. Moved out of the apartment, applied for a loan, and tried to piece my life back together. But the betrayal and the financial mess Michael left behind were hard to shake off. It felt like I was living in a nightmare, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't wake up. Moving in with Lucy was supposed to be temporary. Just until I got back on my feet, I kept telling myself. But days turned into weeks, and the weight of what happened with Michael wasn't lifting, it was getting heavier. "I can't believe that jerk did this to you," Lucy said one evening, as we sat on her couch, a pile of unpaid bills on the coffee table. "And left you with all these debts." I took a sip, the warmth of the tea doing little to comfort me. "I've been thinking about getting a second job. Maybe at the diner or the gas station. I need to start paying off these debts somehow." "That's a start, Anna. But what about talking to a lawyer? Maybe there's a way to get some of the money back from Michael." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. "With what money, Lucy? I can't even afford a lawyer. And even if I could, Michael's gone. Vanished. No one knows where he is." The conversation hit a dead end, as it often did these days. The reality was, I was stuck. Stuck in a situation I never imagined I'd be in, struggling to find a way out. The next few weeks were a blur of job applications, rejection letters, and growing despair. I managed to get a part-time job at the local diner, but it was barely enough to cover the interest on the loans, let alone the principal amount. And yet I fought, I tried with all my little strength. Lucy was there, and that was the main thing. Once she hinted that I could ask my parents for help, but I categorically refused. "I'm 34 years old, and I can handle all this on my own." A few months passed, I worked 2 jobs, paid off the loan and even rented a small apartment, finally moving out from Lucy. The upcoming Valentine's Day was just another reminder of how far my life had veered off course. Planning to spend the evening with nothing but my cat and a large pizza for company, I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. That's when the unexpected happened. The doorbell rang, and I figured it was the pizza delivery. Swiping a hand over my face to wipe away the remnants of tears and straightening my pajama top, I shuffled to the door, ready to face the only date I had that night, a large pepperoni with extra cheese. But it wasn't the pizza guy. Instead, there stood a delivery man holding the largest bouquet of roses I'd ever seen, looking like he was trying to find the recipient of a mistaken order. "Anna Smith?" he asked, a bit uncertain. "Yeah, that's me. But I think you've got the wrong place." "I didn't order any flowers," I said, confusion lacing my voice. "No mistake, ma'am. These are for you," he said, handing me a small card that came with the bouquet. I took the card, my hand shaking a bit as I read the message. "You're beautiful. I've liked you for a long time, but I want to remain anonymous for now." My heart skipped a beat. "But who sent these?" I asked, looking up at the delivery man, who merely shrugged. "Sorry, ma'am. I just deliver 'em. Don't know anything about the sender," he said before turning to leave. Closing the door, I stood there, holding the bouquet and the note, feeling a mix of emotions. Confusion, surprise, but most of all, a tiny spark of hope. Someone out there thought I was beautiful. After everything that had happened, it felt like a lifeline. I called Lucy, unable to keep this to myself. "Lucy, you won't believe what just happened. I got flowers. From a secret admirer," I blurted out as soon as she answered. "Wait, what? Flowers? On Valentine's Day? Girl, spill." Lucy's voice was a mix of excitement and curiosity. I told her about the delivery, the note, and how it made me feel. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Anna, it's wonderful. But also a bit creepy, don't you think? Secret admirer and all?" Lucy finally said, her tone a blend of happiness for me and concern. "I know, it sounds crazy. But right now, I'll take a bit of wonderful in my life, even if it comes with a side of creepy," I admitted, feeling a smile creep onto my face for the first time in months. "Fair enough. Just be careful, okay? And hey, enjoy the flowers. You deserve to feel beautiful, because you are," Lucy added, her words warming my heart. The rest of the night, I found myself glancing at the bouquet, letting myself dream a little. It was a small gesture, but it marked the beginning of something new for me. I wasn't ready to jump back into the dating scene, but this mysterious gesture made me feel seen, valued, and most importantly, it sparked a change within me. The days following the flower delivery were filled with a new sense of anticipation. Each morning, I found myself looking out the window, half expecting another surprise delivery. And then, it happened again. I was at work, drowning in a sea of paperwork, when a delivery guy walked in with a parcel. My heart skipped a beat when he asked for me. The office went silent, everyone's eyes were on me as I signed for the package. "Looks like someone's got a secret admirer," teased Mark, one of my coworkers, as he leaned over my desk with a smirk. I rolled my eyes, trying to ignore the butterflies in my stomach. "Yeah, well, let's not make a big deal out of it," I mumbled, feeling my cheeks heat up. I waited until lunchtime to open the parcel, curiosity getting the better of me. Inside, there was a beautiful brooch and a note that read, "To you, my true love. You are beautiful." That evening, I called Lucy to tell her about the latest development. "Another gift? And this time a brooch? Wow, this admirer of yours is really laying it on thick," Lucy said, her voice filled with amusement. "I know, right? It's kind of overwhelming. But also, kind of nice?" I admitted, fiddling with the brooch. "Just kind of nice? Girl, you're glowing. I can practically hear the smile in your voice," she teased. A few days later, buoyed by the mystery and kindness of my secret admirer, I found myself walking a little taller, smiling a bit more. It was as if the small acts of kindness were slowly chipping away at the walls I'd built around myself. Then, on a whim, I decided to wear the brooch to my favorite coffee shop after work. As I sat there, sipping on my latte and reading a book, I couldn't help but feel a pair of eyes on me. Looking up, I caught the gaze of a man sitting across the room. He was handsome, with a warm smile that made my heart do a little flip. He raised his cup towards me in a silent toast, before standing up and walking over. "Hi," I couldn't help but notice that brooch. "It's quite beautiful," he said, nodding towards the pin on my jacket. I felt my cheeks warm up. "Oh, thank you. It was a gift," I said, suddenly shy. "A gift? Sounds like someone thinks quite highly of you," he replied, his smile widening. "Yeah, it seems so," I said, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "I'm Anna, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Anna. I'm Alex. Do you mind if I join you?" he asked, gesturing to the chair opposite me. "Not at all," I said, my heart racing. Was this a coincidence, or could Alex be? We talked for what felt like hours, about everything and nothing. For the first time in a long time, I felt a genuine connection with someone. But the question of whether he was my secret admirer lingered in the back of my mind. As the evening came to a close, Alex stood up to leave. "I had a great time talking to you, Anna. I hope we can do it again soon." "I'd like that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, gave me a small wave, and then he was gone. I sat there for a moment, lost in thought. Whether Alex was my admirer or not, one thing was clear: I was starting to feel alive again. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of excitement and curiosity. Alex and I started seeing each other more often, going for walks, catching movies, and spending hours talking about everything under the sun. Yet, the identity of my secret admirer remained a mystery, one that tickled the back of my mind but didn't consume my thoughts as it once had. One evening, over coffee at my now favorite spot, I decided to bring it up with Alex. "Alex, can I ask you something kind of odd?" I started, stirring my coffee nervously. He looked up, his eyes curious. "Sure, anything." "What's up?" "It's just, well, before we started hanging out, I received these gifts from a secret admirer. And part of me wondered if it was you," I said, finally voicing the suspicion that had been dancing around in my head. Alex raised his eyebrows, a smile playing on his lips. "Me? A secret admirer? That's kind of flattering, but no, Anna, it wasn't me. I'm more of a direct approach kind of guy," he confessed, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Oh," I said, feeling a mix of disappointment and relief. I guess it was a silly thought. Not silly. Just shows you're loved by more people than you realize, he said warmly. The conversation shifted to other topics, but the mystery of the secret admirer lingered in my mind. It wasn't until a few days later that the truth finally came out. Lucy and I were at my place, having one of our movie nights, when she suddenly turned to me with a serious look on her face. "Anna, there's something I've been meaning to tell you," Lucy began, pausing the movie. "What's up?" I asked, sensing the gravity in her tone. "The gifts, the flowers, the brooch. It was me. I sent them," she blurted out, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. For a moment, I just stared at her, processing her words. "You? But why?" Lucy took a deep breath. "After everything with Michael, I saw how much you were hurting. You deserved to feel special, loved. I thought, maybe if you thought someone was out there admiring you, it might help you see yourself the way I do." I was speechless. The gesture was so thoughtful, so like Lucy, yet I couldn't believe she had kept it a secret for so long. "Lucy, I don't know what to say. That was incredibly sweet, but you didn't have to do that," I finally managed, my voice thick with emotion. "I know I didn't have to. I wanted to. You're my best friend, Anna. I hate seeing you sad," she said, her own voice cracking. We hugged, a long, tight embrace that said everything words couldn't. When we pulled apart, I wiped away a tear. "You're the best friend anyone could ever ask for, you know that?" I said, smiling through my tears. From that point on, the shadow of my secret admirer faded away, replaced by the warmth of true friendship and the beginning of something real with Alex. Lucy's act of kindness had been the push I needed to start healing, to open up to the possibility of love again. And for that, I was eternally grateful. A year and a half of twists and turns, and just when I thought life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, the past decided to knock on my door. Literally. I was flipping through a magazine, ironically the one that featured me as Employee of the Year, when the doorbell rang. Standing there, with a look that mixed regret with desperation, was Michael, my ex-fiancé. "Anna, wow. You look incredible," he stammered, his eyes scanning me up and down. "I saw your picture in the magazine. Employee of the Year, huh? That's amazing." I raised an eyebrow, not sure whether to slam the door in his face or let him speak. Curiosity won. "What do you want, Michael?" He shuffled uncomfortably. I messed up, Anna. Big time. The model, well, it didn't work out. And I've been thinking a lot about us, about how I treated you. I'm sorry. Truly. I was hoping, maybe we could start over? The audacity of the man was almost laughable. Almost. Start over? I echoed, disbelief lacing my words. After everything you put me through? I know. It sounds crazy. But I've changed, Anna. I have. And seeing you now, so successful, so beautiful. It just made me realize what an idiot I was. His words, meant to flatter, fell flat. Michael, you didn't just break my heart. You left me in debt, remember? $20,000 worth of wedding expenses? He winced, as if hoping I'd forgotten. Right. The money. Look, I can pay you back. I will pay you back. Just give me a chance to make things right. The thought of getting my money back was tempting, not gonna lie. You return the money, and then we'll talk, I said, more to see if he'd actually do it than any real hope of reconciliation. To my surprise, he agreed. And true to his word, he paid back every cent. But when he came back, expecting open arms, I had a different plan. Here's your money, Anna. Every last dollar. So, what do you say? Can we try again? He asked, a hopeful look in his eyes. I took a deep breath, looking at the man I once thought I'd spend my life with. Michael, getting this money back. It's closure for me. But it doesn't erase what happened. You called me. What was it? Oh, right. Too fat. Ugly. And now you're here because your model girlfriend dumped you, and suddenly, I'm beautiful and charming? He opened his mouth to protest, but I raised a hand to stop him. No, Michael. I've moved on. I found someone who loves me for me. Not for how I look or what I achieve. And I realized I don't need someone who only sees my worth when I'm on the up. I don't need traitors. As he walked away, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I closed the door, turning back to the life I had rebuilt from the ashes he left behind. A life filled with love, respect, and genuine happiness. Alex came into the room, wrapping an arm around my waist. Everything okay? He asked, sensing the shift in the air. I leaned into him, a content smile spreading across my face. Everything's perfect. Let's not let the past take up any more of our present, okay? Okay. He agreed, kissing the top of my head. And just like that, the final chapter of my past closed, leaving me free to fully embrace the beautiful, unwritten future ahead.